Despite losing to Georgia, could Auburn still be getting better throughout the season?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up as we do every Sunday with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, little morning after edition of Locked On Auburn. We'll talk about some of the things that Hugh Freeze said in his presser, as well as, okay, it's our thoughts now going into the bye week. What does Auburn need to do? And is the schedule even tougher than we thought with Vanderbilt taking down Alabama? We will definitely mention that again. But Darrell, like we said, the big issue with this Auburn team is don't beat yourself. And I actually don't think they beat themselves for the first time this season. Does that mean they're getting better? Or is it, okay, let's see what they do after this bye week when they go see Missouri?
I think you need to wait to reserve judgment and see what they do after they play Missouri. Because, look, I think what happened today is kind of what we expected to happen. So status quo remains in effect. I think if Auburn would have come out and turned it over 3 or 4 times and got beat by 4 scores, then you could say no. If Auburn came out and took care of the ball like they did, but forced a couple turnovers, hit on some big plays, scored touchdowns instead of field goals, and it was a 1-score loss, then you could say yes. What happened was in between, and so that's why I'm saying they're kind of right where they were last week, in my opinion. They held serve.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this team feels so much better than it did when they took the field against Cal, right? Like, it does feel like this team is better and closer to where they need to be. It's too late, right? Like, it's too late in the season. I'm not trying to, like, sugarcoat anything here. But for folks that are saying, like, there's no development, no progression under Hugh Freeze, like, I do think that is false. Like, I don't think that's true.
I think that Peyton Thorne is a better quarterback now than he was against Cal. People are going to think I'm crazy. I think he's gotten better. He's improved. He's cut down on some of the turnovers, tremendously cut down. Of course, that's easy to do when you throw 4 in one game. But he had, he's cut down. Look at his turnovers since being inserted into the second half against Arkansas. Look at his passing yards. Look at his touchdowns. Look at how he runs the ball. So although he probably made some bad decisions, not a lot, maybe he made a couple poor decisions today on the RPO or whatever. We don't know for sure. We'll talk about that. We don't know whose fault that is. We know who got blamed for it and who got cussed out or yelled at on the sidelines. But I think he's looked better. I think Jarquez Hunter has looked better just by the fact that he's getting the ball more, thank God, running the ball harder. KLS has been a constant. Then you've got some players regressing. I think Percy Lewis is regressing. I want to see more Cam Coleman, right? So defensively, there's some players. Kayan Lee doesn't look the same to me. He looks like he's regressing. So when you add up the pluses from some things that have improved since week 2, then you add in the minuses. I think we're kind of right where we were. Do I feel better about the football team now than I did against Cal? It's hard to say because I thought that was a fluke. I thought Auburn would bounce back and not lose again until today.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of ifs and buts. I see some bright spots of improvement, but I see some tendencies that haven't gone away, some of which is coach induced and play calling that seems to be same old, same old.
Yeah. And there are guys like Keldrick Falk, I thought was incredible yesterday. I mean, he looks like an NFL player.
Yep.
And I mean, over the last 3 weeks, and he's been fine all year, but like the last 3 weeks, he's really just, I think, been the guy up front that you needed him to be. We're like, all right, if Auburn's going to be good on defense, they need Keldrick to do this, and he's doing it. I thought Dorian Mausi played pretty well yesterday outside of Keldrick. And then, Jay Crawford is a guy that we talked about a ton on the post-game live. Be sure to go check that out if you missed it. But, I think right now he's playing the best corner on this team. I think he's playing better than Kayan Lee is right now when you look at the last 2 weeks. I think he's playing better than, Keontae back there, which, you talk about regression. Like, it seems like Keontae's gotten significantly worse than what he was a year ago. Like, who's Whose fault is that? Is it the player? Is it the coaches? Is it just the fact of like it's not the same situation as a year ago? There's a million variables that go into this. And like it's I wish folks could tune in this morning, whether they're listening or watching, and we say, yes, these things are good and these things are bad, and here's what it means. But there's so many different points, not like points that you score, but like items to discuss within the football program that are so up and down every single week, where it's like, okay, well, this, Rivaldo Fairweather was down earlier this year. He's playing better. He's making some key catches, and KLS has been steady, but it's just, there's so much almost like randomness throughout the execution and throughout just the overall performance of these individual players, and then just consistency of like the good play calls and the bad play calls and weird game situations. I don't know. It's just everybody's going in a different direction right now, it feels like.
It's also frustrating when you hear analysts like Greg McElroy praise Auburn, which has got to be tough for him, but say things like, man, this guy's a player, or this guy's playing hard, or man, he's a really nice player. He doesn't get, I think he's getting a unfair shake, or this guy, there were compliments, and then you watch it unfold and you go, gosh, that's a big league play right there made by Thorne on the rollout to KLS, and the throw to Fairweather on the sideline, and the runs by Austin and Jarquez, and the sacks by Keldrick Faulk. There's so many things that you watch that you get excited about that, in my opinion, gives you a little bit of false hope, because then you see things like corners getting burned in the secondary, receivers running free, missed tackles, misreads on handoffs, offensive linemen being turnstiles or statues, receivers not blocking downfield when you could pick up 20 extra yards on a quarterback keeper. They offset each other. Mm-hmm. And when they offset each other, you will lose games you're not supposed to win. But typically, you should win the games that you should win. But what happened with Auburn is they didn't win those games because they turned it over so much and had so much self-inflicted. Auburn's season in a microcosm was the first drive. Okay. Defense plays well. They get off the field 3 and out, and they can't get out of their way and have a substitution penalty and give Georgia extra life, extra downs. And what does Georgia do? Scores a touchdown. Now, had Auburn lost this game by 1 score, that would have been very difficult to live with. Thankfully, it mattered from a momentum standpoint and from a trend standpoint, but it didn't affect the outcome of the game. But guess what, Zach? It might down the road. It might in a 1-score game against Missouri or Kentucky, or, down the road. And I think what has shown me today is that things that I looked at the schedule and thought, oh, that's a win, now look questionable. But there were a few on there that I took as an automatic L that might look winnable too. Goes back to the same thing we talked about. Missouri, getting boat raced by A&M, but yet I thought A&M was a game that was really, really winnable for Auburn. Now you got to worry about Vanderbilt. I mean, you just do. I mean, you can't. So, but that goes back to that ledger of plus minus, and it just kind of being where we
are.
Where it is. Yeah. But now you said something that's very important. Who knows what the bye week brings from that? Who knows how the bye week affects the rest of the year? We shall see.
Yeah. And obviously guys are banged up. That's football in the SEC at this point in the season. Like, you're going to have guys that are banged up. Does this bye week help you with that? Does it help the coaches as far as whether they're not communicating well to the players, or the players are having a hard time executing? Maybe an extra week helps them figure that out. Once again, it's kind of too late at this point, but maybe they can figure it out for the future. We'll see. And, maybe you see some position changes where they're like, okay, we're going to give some of these guys reps, but at the bye week, we're going to really kind of make that switch in some places in the depth chart. There could be guys that lose jobs, before Auburn heads to take on Missouri. And so we'll certainly touch on that throughout the week as well. Hugh Freeze said some things that are going to be the storyline of the bye week. Let's just call it what it is. So let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. I said Auburn would cover. I said Auburn would cover the 23.5. They did it. It was a little close, and we'll see. We'll see what Auburn's line against Missouri is. I'm genuinely curious after Missouri got thumped by Texas A&M. So
I'm going to predict. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to say 10.
Give me a line.
I'm going to say 10.
10. Missouri minus 10.
And I will say this too about FanDuel. If I was to participate when it was 1st and 40 for Georgia with the way Auburn's season has gone, I would have jumped on FanDuel and bet that Georgia would have picked up that first down.
Yeah.
I was like, it's coming.
Not the worst bet.
But I would have lost because they didn't.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Hey, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Check it out, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Darrell Dapprich hanging out as he does every single Sunday with us. Hugh Freeze was asked about the pivotal 4th and 1 call that resulted. It looked like it was a read option, and he passed up the option to give it to Jarquez Hunter, and then Peyton tried to make something happen as you do on fourth down, and it didn't happen. He said, Freeze said the 4th and 1 call was a dive to Jarquez Hunter. It was not supposed to be a read by Peyton Thorne. And then Freeze said that Thorne made his own decision to pull the ball. Peyton absolutely didn't go with what we called. I mean, that's going to be the talking point this week.
So if it's a dive to the left, it should have just been a straight handoff, and Hunter would have went left, and he would have went away from the 3 rushers. Okay, I get that. My concern about that is, why do you consistently put Thorne in a read option type scenario 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, rather than on 4th and 1 putting him under center and just handing the ball off to Hunter with the pivot handoff to the right where he would have went to the dive?
I don't think the play call is what's the storyline's going to be. I think it's going to be the quote where Peyton didn't go with what we called.
Okay.
I think that's the storyline.
Then quit putting him in that situation to not
situation
called.
So what does that mean when you
put him under center and hand the ball off? I don't care if he says it's supposed to be a dive left. He apparently there was still something there that made Thorne decide to change the play. Allegedly, I don't know. I'm not. Here's my point on this: is the bigger issue of him saying that is, I want to hear him also say, and if we're Cam Coleman, we need to block downfield on Peyton Thorne's 15-yard run that could have been 40. And oh, by the way, we can't take 2 sacks right there with our left tackle Percy Lewis looking like a statue, and then getting a procedure penalty, which would have given us a first down. I don't like the selectiveness of how he chews on Thorne and calls out Thorne in press conferences and keeps everybody else sacred.
Well, he's usually asked about the quarterback, to be fair. He's asked about 4th and short.
He was asked about self-inflicted errors and very much dodged the Towns Magoo missed 27-yard field goal. He said something later on about we can't miss field goals. But, I mean, I've been in press conferences where he's been asked specific things that he could have definitely said, Zach, well, this player needs to step up, and he did not. Okay. He went around it. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him out throwing players under the bus. I love that. But he constantly, look, there was a problem.
Well, hold on real quick, Darrell. And I just want to agree that him saying what a player should or shouldn't do does not mean it's him throwing a player under the bus. Can we agree on that?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. I'm saying that has been this stupid narrative.
I understand. I just want to make sure people are saying, I'm saying that you're not saying that he's throwing players under the bus.
I'm not.
Okay. Right.
He's specifically mentioning a player. I'm saying he should specifically mention other players if he's going to mention one. And I'm also saying that on the sidelines, when the cameras capture him chewing Thorne up and down, it would be a little bit more consistent if there was other players that faced his wrath too. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, it doesn't seem that way. And that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah. Period. I wonder, and I agree with you, but just for the sake of like asking questions on that, like the game day operations, is he over quarterbacks? Does he let the offensive line coach, does he let, certain guys handle certain position groups? But he's a head coach. He can do whoever he wants, right?
So, I think you're 100% right. He might
I'm just asking the question. I agree.
He may be deferring to position coaches. And And that's right. But because he's the play caller and maybe deals directly with the quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, you're the head coach, and I think that's a bad look. Yeah. I could be wrong, and people could disagree. That's fine. But I think that's a bad look. It looks selective to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I still think Hugh Freeze is the guy for Auburn. This is not me being overly critical, but there are some like this is strange to me. And also just like, how do you call it? We talked about this a lot in the live. Like when it just seems to always happen in key plays, like key situations, whether it's fourth and short or 3rd and 4 or in the red zone, where just weird things happen, whether it's a bad play call just outright in like the Wildcat stuff that we saw against Oklahoma, or guys not doing the right thing, or I don't know, the pick 6 from Oklahoma got really overblown and dissected with a microscope because of some of Peyton Thorne's comments. But these big plays, it always just seems like they're not all there as far as on the same page. And how are we at that point? How are we at that point? I know it wasn't ideal that you had to flip quarterbacks twice and you pull Peyton and you go back, but still, there's no excuse for that at this point of the season. And the fact that Peyton Thorne was the starter all last year too. Like we should just be we should be way past that. That should not be our issue.
You're right. It shouldn't be the issue. And especially when you hear people that I respect that are national analysts that have played the position before, who have coached for a long time, saying that, you know, he's getting undue criticism, Peyton Thorne is, and that he's not as bad as being made out to be. He's being put, I heard something today where someone said he's being put in difficult situations, impossible situations, I've heard. I don't know. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be one thing. It could be a multitude of things. And when you're 2 and 4, it's a multitude of things. It's poor quarterback play. It's poor decision. It's turning it over. It's bad play calling. It's poor execution. It runs the gamut when you're 2 and 4. And I think the goal, well, we'll talk about that in the bye week thoughts. I want to give my what Auburn needs to do coming out of the bye week, what I feel like the goal needs to be.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll save
that's
that.
Great. Yeah. What does the goal need to be? And how does what happened on Saturday outside of the Auburn and Georgia matchup, does it shift any expectations for the rest of Auburn's season? It should. It certainly should. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time, Darrell. It's the best place to buy tickets. It's the only place where you and I choose to buy tickets.
I love buying them at Game Time, not only for sporting events, but it's the one-stop shop for concerts, which I love. I do like theater plays, take my wife to plays.
You like what?
Plays. Well, you say it better than I do. I can't say it. The theater, yes.
The theater.
Concerts, comedy shows. Look, me and you've talked about it. Double up. Go out of town to a sporting event and go, by the way, while I'm here on a Friday night, let me see if there's a good comedy show or a good concert in town at a different venue and check out both. That's a great opportunity to do that from just one app.
Yep. They also, you can toggle the all-in pricing. So it's like you're not blasted by fees.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, how many times have we bought a ticket for like $30 or $40 and it's like, why is this $92?
And I get to check out and I have sticker shock. I don't have that problem. I know exactly what I'm paying.
That's right. Yeah. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Darrell, what time is it?
Game time.
Final few minutes of today's show as we recap this 31-13 loss to the Georgia Bulldogs for the Auburn Tigers. As far as BiWeek goals, to me, get healthy. You got some banged up guys, but to me, like, I think you go to some of these position groups, Darrell, and you say, hey, like, there may be an upperclassman that's getting more reps than everybody else right now, but we're going to really evaluate that. If there's a freshman that's better than you, we're going to give them more reps over the next 7 days, and we're going to see where things stand. You got to look at the defensive line, particularly a defensive end with like Amaris Williams, and then with defensive tackles with Malik Blockton. Do you give TJ Lindsey more of a look this week just to kind of say, hey, you guys aren't getting the job done consistently? Offensive line, I think you do the same thing with Percy Lewis. And and some of the guys that are backing him up, like Tyler Johnson. Wide receiver, I think you kind of already started to see that. But you go to all these position groups and you say, hey, you're not guaranteed anything anymore. Now's the time where we're going to reopen several of these position battles.
Yeah, I don't want to copy you, but that was definitely one of mine.
Sorry, I just took that from
you.
You.
I have a second one too. Okay, but I want to reiterate yours because I think now is the best time to start unseating guys that you want the younger guys to play. You look at where you are in this point of the season, and you take this bye week and say, I don't care if they're sophomores, juniors, seniors, or freshmen. I'm putting the best 22 out there. And this is the time to do it because you have an extra week to implement some things. The second thing I would do is I would take a long, hard look at the things that we know specifically on film. If I'm the Auburn coaching staff, when I say we, that's getting us beat, and say, look, let's just be realistic and try to eliminate one of those. Mm-hmm. So we know that going into this game against Missouri, turnovers have killed Auburn, poor decision-making from the quarterback position, some poor offensive play calling, execution, not getting off the field on third down, and extending plays on penalties. There's like 6 or 7 things. What can we do in this bye week to clean up, let's just say, half of those? And what kind of impact will that make on our season, the rest of the season, if we attack and address those and get those cleaned up? And let's start doing that right now. They got the turnover bugaboo taken care of tonight. That was step one. The penalties, other than the stupid substitution penalty. But I will say this. I want to be a realist with this. It's easy to go back and look at that. There were 2 or 3 drives where Georgia was like going in to score a touchdown, I feel like. And they got that one that they got a block in the back. They had some holding penalties come back. They had to punt because they had a first down. So they had some self-inflicting penalties too that could have made the score look a little different. So I want to be fair about that. But if you're Auburn, all you can do is worry about Auburn and take care of Auburn. And a bye week's the great time to get that cleaned up. But I start injecting freshmen left and right starting Monday and giving them a ton of reps and saying, because look at a Crawford and a Caleb Harris and a DeMarcus Riddick, what kind of impact they're making on the defense right now.
I mean, Caleb Harris has been exceptional.
And Simmons is starting to come into his own on the offensive side from a receiver. You know, you've got Coleman, who showed flashes early, but he's got to come back around. Auburn's got to have Cam Coleman be that dude. And if that happens, you've got a shot. Anything could happen in college football. We learned that yesterday.
Let's talk about it just for a second. So for the rest of the season, we'll talk about Missouri later. Let's talk about specifically Vanderbilt beating Bama just for a second. For a second. We'll talk about the schedule another time. I can't wait to see the messaging around Auburn or around Alabama's football program after they lose to Vanderbilt.
Well, it's a shocking loss, in my opinion.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I think that the way Alabama beat Georgia last week, there may have been let me tell you something. This is so, oh my gosh, this is like came from the heavens. This is so timely. I went to the benefit dinner at Faulkner University Thursday night, and I heard Nick Saban speak. And Katie Britt was on stage, and she says, what do you do if there's one quality you would give somebody to say why you're successful and what's the best piece of advice to continue that edge? And he mentioned a term called the relief tendency. And what that is after you do something really, really good, you take a breath and you go, wow, that was really good. And you look at that. That's exactly what I think happened. Exactly what happened yesterday. I think that after that win against Georgia, Alabama was on a major, major high. And what does that do for this program? I do believe it has people will start coming out of the woodwork that said, see, Nick Saban wouldn't have never lost a game like this, which his first year he did to Louisiana Monroe, but that was a different roster. It's interesting. It makes the rest of this year from week in, week out, I don't know. Anything can happen. But from an Alabama standpoint, I think this is a loss that really gets the the detractors coming out of the woodwork now saying, see, this is what we thought could happen when Nick Saban retired. He would have never lost to Vanderbilt.
It's just crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. So, yeah, does it make the Vandy game at home like less of a toss-up? Yes.
Well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say it specifically what that meant for Auburn, not necessarily Alabama, since I think that for me, what it does is it makes that Vanderbilt game now definitely a toss-up. I know I hate to say that, but it's a game Auburn should win.
Oh, I think I would. If I had to pick that game right now, I'm picking Vanderbilt.
See, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you can't say, oh, you look at the schedule at the beginning of the year, oh, Vanderbilt W. No, not now. Just like I thought Missouri was an automatic L. No, not now. Auburn can go on the road. Just like I felt better about Texas A&M last week. Now, maybe not so much. It's just ebb and flow. It's ebb and flow.
Yeah. All right. Please like the video. Please subscribe. Darrell, how can people give you all the love in the world?
Dap6410 on X, Darrell Dap on Instagram, Wednesdays and Fridays and reaction shows with you. And let me say this, as these road games are coming up, I'll be going live with you after these road games. So we'll get a little double dose.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So be sure to be subscribed to the show, whether it's on audio or on video. And make sure you never miss an episode. Once again, please like the show. Helps out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.